All right, guys, I'm back with the next one. So this one was another one about Libra coin, and the claim here was that Libra coin will help Facebook maintain its monopoly. So first, some context. I think this is actually a really important debate to have because, as you might know, there's these giant tech monopolies that basically control a large part of society today. That's Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, Alibaba, and they have a lot of power. And so there's these giant tech giants who control a lot of the economy. And now the question is, now that Facebook launched Libra coin, and Facebook is has couple billion-dollar users, is it going to only further help Facebook maintain its monopoly and only exacerbate the problem instead of helping us break down and break up this monopoly? And so I want to dig in and see what the two-story community thinks about whether Libra coin will help Facebook maintain its monopoly. And there was quite a few people who backed this claim, and the angle that they really came at this was saying that now that Facebook is thinking of launching Libra coin, all of a sudden it has a payments integrated into the app, and it's going to allow Facebook to compete in all these new verticals that it wasn't able to compete in before. And there's a few that they list here, which I'll go through. So Ning starts off and she says, remittances is a giant industry. It's $1 billion industry, and if Facebook comes in, and it can compete in that industry. And I'll read what she says here. She says many of the low to middle income countries that are high remittance users are also heavy Facebook users. And she says as long as the government of these countries like India, Nigeria, Mexico, and Philippines, who are heavy remittance users, as long as they don't ban Libra, then Facebook is going to really compete in the remittance space and gain market share and continue to dominate its monopoly in the world. And she kind of says, I can attest that users in the Philippines won't hesitate to send or receive Libra if it becomes handy through Messenger. I'm assuming Ning might be from the Philippines, and she kind of gives firsthand evidence that Philippine users will likely not hesitate to use Facebook Libra coin as remittances if it's available. Another angle, she says, the other thing that Libra allows Facebook to do is compete in social commerce. Historically, Facebook hasn't been able to compete in this space. If you know of an app called WeChat, which is dominant in Asian countries like China, WeChat has all these has the ability to basically it has payments integrated into it. So it allows people to basically not only socialize on the app but also buy and purchase in the app. And so Facebook couldn't do that because there was no payments integrated. But now with Libra coin, it can compete directly with WeChat on social commerce, which is a very powerful move and can continue to help it keep its market share and increase its market share in the world. And then ICO Alert here, he kind of continues on the similar angle, and he says Facebook coin will allow it to dominate in social media and fintech. In social media, he says, there's quite a few blockchain-based social networks that we're trying to form. And he says now that Facebook is launching Libra coin, it's going to compete with these and not give them a chance and eat their lunch. Moreover, he says that fintech, it's going to allow Facebook to compete in the fintech industry because now Facebook all of a sudden is going to have access to all your financial transaction data. And so we combine that with the user data that it already has, and it's going to compete in the fintech industry in a very powerful way. And kind of to summarize, I kind of liked what Matrix Decoder here says at the end, where he kind of says, all of these things, whether it's social commerce, remittances, social media, fintech, banking, etc., these new industries that Facebook is able to compete in, he says this is a dangerous strengthening monopoly in all these new ways, and we should take this seriously. And finally, so on the backing side, Toju had a compelling argument, which I really liked. And the TLDR here is that the launch of Libra coin proves that Facebook has solved the innovator's dilemma and will continue to expand its monopoly to the detriment of the tech and crypto space. And so his argument is, okay, so the innovator's dilemma is this idea that, tech companies get really, really, really big, and they move much, much slower when they're that big. And so they're not innovating as fast. And so it gives startups an opportunity to come in and disrupt them and slowly take over and eat their lunch. So, for example, An example of that is Yahoo versus Google, right? Like Yahoo was a dominant search engine, but over time it got slow, clunky, wasn't able to innovate as fast, and Google came up as a startup and slowly built like the best search engine and was able to compete, and now has become the dominant search engine. So the innovator's dilemma is this idea that when you get really big, it's really hard for you to innovate, and it gives startups an opportunity to come in and compete. And he says, Facebook has broken this cycle. And he says, I don't see how this is good news for the state of tech innovation. Because he says, by launching Libra coin, Facebook got ahead of the innovator's dilemma that it would have faced and innovated. And now it's going to only continue to keep its monopoly. And he says, this news is just more evidence of how a few tech companies are quickly establishing a monopoly over multiple sectors of the global economy. And it's a very, I think, important point to think about, right? And he says, Facebook is already sucking oxygen out of the room for decentralized projects, making it harder for incoming users to differentiate between the value of a sovereign, censorship-resistant, and cryptocurrency versus a manufactured stablecoin like Libra. And I think that's a very powerful thing to think about, and whether Facebook is going to suck the oxygen out of the room for a lot of these decentralized projects. And finally, so those are all the people who backed it. And then we had William here who challenged it, and it looks like this argument is getting a lot of steam because it's on the top of the feed. He says he challenges this, and he says the vast majority of Facebook revenue is digital advertising. Facebook operates as a duopoly in that space, along with Google. And he says Libra doesn't significantly impact this business. So his argument is Facebook's primary driver of revenue is advertising and digital advertising. And so Libra coin doesn't really help it achieve that. And so he doesn't believe that it's going to allow Facebook to maintain its monopoly. And secondly, he says, Libra is governed by a consortium of 27 companies, so it doesn't have full control over all the money it makes. There's a bunch of partners involved in this as well, so it's not like it's the only one making money from this. And then lastly, he says there's a lot of competitors in crypto. He thinks Libra coin has a market share of 0 today. It hasn't even launched yet. All it has is a white paper and a little bit of code to play with, but we still have another year to see what they launch, and another probably few years after that to see what actually happens. So he's like, until it launches, we don't even know if it will work and to what extent. So he argues that no, this Libra coin will not allow Facebook to maintain its monopoly. Overall, I thought the arguments on both sides were really compelling. I particularly found Toju's argument really compelling about how this allowed Facebook to basically solve the innovator's dilemma, and I think that's a very interesting thing to think about. So that concludes this debate, and I'll see you in the next one.